We're very excited to introduce our three next guests, Olivia Plender, Craig Burnett, and Nick Santos Pedro. Olivia Plender was born in London in 1977, where she lives and works. A visual artist, her work draws from a wide range of sources, from 18th century political satire and popular printing to theater of the absurd. Her recent exhibitions include a show at Gasworks, as well as the Tate Triennial in 2009. And this is not the first collaboration here in the park at the Serpentine with Olivia, who had actually been part of the 2006 interview marathon with Rem Koolhaas, and had also done a performance in 2006 in the park, which was a guided walk. She here collaborates with Craig Burnett, who has written for Frieze Art Review, as well as the Times Literary Supplement, The Globe, and Mail. His book about Jeff Wall is published by Tate. His poetry has appeared in the Canadian Literature, in the Antigonist Review, as well as in the bauaushop.org.uk, which Michael Glover introduced yesterday. Their piece is performed by Nick Santos Pedro, who is a Canadian poet and neuroarchivist. He lives and works in London. A very, very warm welcome to Olivia, to Craig, and to Nick.
No, I'm okay. Olivia and I share an interest in a filmmaker called Johan Riding. And we're working on a book right now about this filmmaker. So what we're going to do today is today we're very lucky to have Roger Quallen here today, who is an academic who's working on Johan Riding's work. And he's going to read an introduction to the book that we're working on. And then we're going to have a synopsis of one of his films, his first film called The Lost Clown. We'll just read that out. And then we actually have a fragment of a script. The thing about Johan Riding is his films are in tatters. And the point of the book is to bring together whatever is left. There are fragments of script, there are photographs, there's biography. This is what the book will hope to achieve. Roger is one of the world's leading experts on Johan Riding. After the synopsis, we have a brief segment of the script, which I'm going to hand out. I think we have 20, so we don't have one for everybody. But we're going to read out the script and play certain parts. We don't know whether this script actually was used in the final film, but it does give you an insight into his work. So I'll introduce Dr. Roger Quallen, who's from Augsburg College, Minneapolis, and I'll just hand out a few pieces of paper and sit down, and then I'll come back up in a second with Olivia. Thanks.
Thank you, Craig. I'd like to thank Craig and Olivia for bringing me here today. I'd also like to thank Harrison Stanton, Dean of Augsburg College, and Hans-Ulrich and the wonderful staff here at the Serpentine Gallery. I'm going to read an excerpt. This is a work in progress. This is an excerpt from the introduction of a book that I'm doing about the life of Johan Riding, who I will introduce to you most likely for the very first time today. Johan Riding was born in the forest and died in obscurity, but in between he blazed like a comet behind an overcast sky, creating one of the most singularly beautiful oeuvres in late 20th century film, 4 works, or possibly 5, that languish almost entirely unrecognized despite their brilliance. In many ways, it was the perfect life. Blissful childhood, ambition matched by talent, persistent self-belief, the means to realize his dreams. Yet it is impossible to reflect on the life and work of this master director without a galling, dreadful poignancy. After all, no one, no audience, no young filmmaker, nor even the most obsessive of cineasts will ever have the pleasure of experiencing, in its entirety, one of his 4 films again, and future generations will forever remain bereft of his magnificent vision. While he remains a hero to a few, he is largely forgotten, his existence unredeemed. It is my aim to salvage the dusty tail of his comet and the residue of his brilliance, the scraps and remnants that have emerged over the past decade to collect into a single volume this ramshackle anthology of anecdote and historical record. But to salvage this ephemera, to revel in its ruins, is insufficient. It is essential to collect into a coherent whole the fragments, relics, and memories of the lost works, to heal the wounds of the lost plots, to restore Johann Ryding's dismembered body of work to some Lovecraftian semblance of wholeness. A number of factors exacerbate an already difficult situation. The artist's solitary nature, his itinerant life, the difficulty of tracking down members of the small crews with which he worked, the recent death of his longtime collaborator, Hamish Schmiel, and the reluctance of the artist's sister, the last surviving member of his immediate family, to participate in the preparation of this book. And so, we are left to conjecture the rest, imagining what we cannot prove, guessing what we cannot sleuth. While the piecemeal reconstruction of this remarkable oeuvre will never replace the work, now lost forever, this book achieves its aim, well, I sincerely believe it achieves its aim, of providing a thoroughgoing history and exegesis of Ryding's 4 films, or, as some have argued, 5 films, with the last, Hector, unsatisfactorily finished by the aforementioned producer Hamish Schmiel after Ryding's death, that are unsurpassed for their intensity and their rigor. Brief biographical note. Johann Ryding was born in November 1950 in Olympia, Washington, into a family of prosperous timber merchants. His father's family had lived in the US since at least the 19th century, of German or possibly Baltic origin, although there are no records that confirm how or why the family adopted the unusual English name Ryding. A theory offered to me by a cousin in Seattle, Washington, is that Ryding is an anglicization of von Reinen, or possibly Rheinbeben, though there is no way to confirm this palpably fanciful history. However, the family came to call themselves Ryding. It is likely that the name is the alteration of a lost, probably homophonic original. His mother, Flora Ryding, née Macquarie, hailed from Winnipeg, Manitoba, and came from a line of hardy Celtic farming stock. His parents met amidst the smoldering aftermath of the Second World War in a hospital in Belgium, where his mother was working as a psychiatric nurse and his father, a civil engineer, also called Johann, was recuperating after a little misadventure with an unexploded bomb. The couple returned to Seattle in 1947 and were married within 3 months. After a brief honeymoon in California, Johann Ryding Sr. began to work in earnest in the family's timber business. The young Johann spent his boyhood gamboling among the rainforests and mountains of the Pacific Northwest, often disappearing for hours to pick huckleberries or build forts, or to eat huckleberries in the forts he built, whiling away the hours in a wilderness as lush as his imagination. The idol of his youth slammed headfirst into tragedy when Johann Sr. plunged to his death while driving a truck that slid from a gravel road amid heavy rainfall, while he and his cousin were surveying the edges of the Olympic National Forest. Almost immediately after the crash, when Johann was in his early teens, his mother decided to move the family. Johann was blessed with a younger sister, to Seattle, so that he could attend a school that would allow him to fulfill his academic and artistic ambitions, a drive that had already become strongly evident. In August 1968, after Johann graduated from high school, the mother moved the Ryding family once again, this time to Canada, bringing Johann and his younger sister Anna to live with relatives in Winnipeg, Manitoba. Some have speculated, scandalously, that this move was motivated by Flora Ryding's desire to save her son from the Vietnam War conscription, but this rumor is risibly implausible. As a student, and a gifted one at that, he would have been ineligible. Within a year, the restless young Johann had moved to Vancouver, where he attended the Vancouver School of Art now MCAD, intermittently for 2 years before leaving without a degree. During the early 1970s, Johann made regular trips to Olympia and its surroundings, working in the family timber business to raise money for his projects. At the same time, he wrote poems, stories, screenplays, and scenarios, while filling scrapbooks with doodles and photographs. It was during this period that he developed a close relationship with his uncle, Klaus Riding, his father's brother, and the man who had become the sole proprietor of the family's business after his father's death. Klaus Riding was considerably older than his deceased brother, a lifelong bachelor with a dour, brutish countenance, who was as severe with his staff as he was abstemious with himself. Yet he was widely read, a lover of music. He and his young nephew shared an interest in philosophy, including a deep admiration of the works of Arthur Schopenhauer, and influenced by this saturnine giant of German philosophy, Eastern aestheticism, and mysticism, Uncle Klaus influenced the young Johann's taste in literature, philosophy, and film. And many people believe that it was he who dissuaded Johann from adapting, for his first film, Unhappy Hooligan, Death in Grease Paint, 1956, a little-known Stuart Palmer mystery set in a circus. A marked-up copy of this novel is known to exist in the collection of the artist's sister. Either you are a poet or you are a slave, Uncle Klaus admonished the young man, a motto that became a motivating force for Johann throughout his short life. Although he had a severe and forbidding nature, Uncle Klaus was a great supporter of the arts and one of Seattle's most generous philanthropists. And that's what he became for Johann. Once he had shown the old man a treatment and script for the film, Uncle Klaus provided Johann with the funds to make The Lost Clown. The Lost Clown, an urgent excoriation of the mid-century bourgeoisie, played sporadically in alternative cinema spaces in Seattle and Vancouver, and it was also exhibited at the now defunct Bay Area Film Festival, BAF. Riding's own hostility to what he considered the materiality and elitism of the art world, combined with his aspiration to be perceived by the public, and especially perhaps by his Uncle Klaus, as a filmmaker and moreover a mainstream one, meant that the film was never, as far as I'm aware, shown in artist-run spaces where it might have found a sympathetic audience. Despite this limited exposure, The Lost Clown launched Riding's career, if we dare call it that, for the film caught the attention of both aficionados of underground cinema and mainstream producers, including Hamish Smeel, the man who would become a steadfast presence in his life for the next decade. So this should provide enough background in the work. Thank you for listening to the brief excerpt. I believe we're now going to hear a synopsis of The Lost Clown, read by Craig Burnett.
Thank you, Roger. So this is just a synopsis that we've managed to gather from various sources, various memories, and a few of the fragments that we have. So The Lost Clown, which is 1973. Basil the Clown is weary of the circus. He never wanted to run the blasted thing anyway. It was his father's dream, and it was forced upon him. He's heard grumblings behind his back, talk of revolution. Attendance has been low, money scarce. He's pretty sure that every carny and every acrobat can see it on his unpainted face. He would rather retire with his fishing pole than spend another day managing this worn-out travesty of a circus. One morning, as the trucks and trailers pull into the outskirts of a small town and dawn spills over the horizon, Basil, aka Sudsy Squirts, emerges from a caravan. In the distance, sledgehammers attack big spikes with rhythmic clinks. Leah Peace, the big-armed strongman, appears with Wian, his wife and the world's smallest beauty queen, who balances her on his palm. Basil, we need to talk to you, he says, which Wian echoes in a bird-like chirp, before he leads the old clown to meet the troupe. And what a troupe. There's Davy Clump, the chubby clown, Jim and Tim Solarius, twin acrobats, Kat Popova, political emigre and chief contortionist, Ginger, the chatterbox bear, and finally, Eddie Brass, whose team of trapeze artists sneer at Sorry, I'm kidding. Sneer at Basil with sinewy contempt. Only Isabelle Mondu, the young, the beautiful horse trainer, and Archie Blunt, the old ringmaster, are missing. The ragtag troupe glares in silent rebellion. They want change, a new vision, new acts to attract a modern audience. Basil dismisses the troupe with a spidery wave of his hand, tells them that tradition is tradition, and they wouldn't know how to run a circus if they were Bozo himself. Meanwhile, trouble has been brewing for weeks. Isabelle Mondu and Archie Blunt have hatched a plot to usurp the clown and revolutionize the circus with light shows and folk music. Isabelle seduces the troupe into believing that the only way to turn a profit is to transform the circus into a co-op, and that means ditching Sudsy. All the while, Isabelle tells the old clown that he would disappoint his dead father if he gave up now, that it is his destiny to run the circus until he dies. She tells the clown to get heavy with his crew, to tell Wian she's a freak and not a beauty, that Ginger would be sitting in a zoo if it weren't for the circus, Kat Popova washing the underwear of some creepy dictator. The only way to retain power, she says, is to dish out a little abuse from time to time. The next day, the troupe puts on the best performance of the season, acknowledged by a thunderous standing ovation. While a relaxed Basil retires to his caravan, the troupe gather in the stables. There, they plot to overthrow the clown before tomorrow's performance. Together, they pen the chant that brings Basil down. So that's the film. So if Olivia could come up now, we're going to just read the script that some of you have. The script you have is a artifact that was found in the filmmaker's apartment when he died. So the doodles and the information on it are what we believe to be Johan Riding's own comments. So now we'll just read. So, okay. I think we'll probably. Olivia is going to play the role of Isabelle Mondu, the horse trainer. Roger Quallen is going to play Basil, or Sudsy Squirts. I'm going to read the stage directions, and also at one point I have to play Archie Blunt, the ringmaster. So, the page is 78, so what we think is that this is toward the end of the film. It's the denouement of the film. So, interior, big top, dressing room. Basil checks his makeup in the mirror, stands.
And as for the clown?
He never smiled. In the morning, he got up.
Basil watches as the wind blows in the tent flap, rain spattering the ground near their shoes.
He got up, put on his suit. He'd go to work. It was all numbers, asset columns, debits, tax codes, system functions, deadlines. He ate his lunch at noon, never made jokes.
Did he at least wear a clown costume once in a while?
No. No costume. No makeup. No ping pong ball nose. No flipper shoes. Just the accounts. Every morning in at 8:30, home by 5. Sitting in a desk in a large room where other men sat at desks. Under fluorescent tubes. Weak watery coffee in the cafeteria.
Basil reaches up with a finger and touches the canvas, rain immediately bridging the fabric and his skin, flowing down his arm. He shakes it from his shirt sleeve.
No fake buckets of water filled with confetti. No flowers popping out of his pant legs.
Home to a beer. Maybe some TV. On the weekends, he walked down to the river, watched the grasses waving along the banks, sometimes dropped a stick into the current to see how long it would take to get down to the old railway bridge. He'd stand there by that river for hours.
That
Never wore a watch.
That doesn't sound like a clown to me.
Basil opens his umbrella and peers into the cloud-choked sky through a crack in the big top.
No, believe me, he was a clown.
Exterior, day. Basil emerges from the back of the big top to find himself surrounded by his troupe, fronted by the ringmaster, Archie.
Archie, we're on in 5.
Not today, Sudsy. Not today. In the background, Isabel emerges from the big top and nods. The troupe begins to sing in unison. Sudsy squirts, the sinister clown. He fucks us up, he makes us frown. Sudsy squirts, he's barely alive. If he were dead, then we'd all thrive. As the troupe continues to sing, Basil slumps into the mud. Isabel kneels in a puddle and touches his shoulder.
It was you all along, wasn't it?
And then we don't know what Isabel said. That's where the fragment ends. So anyway, thanks very much. That was our introduction to Johann writing.